Hey guys, welcome back to another snapshot video. The skins don't work in the snapshot, that's why I'm in the Steve skin. But let's not focus on that. There's actually a couple new additions to the game and some very important balancing. Alright, so let's start with a new addition to the game. Goat horns have been added. You probably have heard of them because they were added to the Bedrock edition a while ago. Now we also have them in Java. So there are 8 different versions. You can also listen to them real quick. Okay, so this was the first type. There's a really long cooldown until you can use the next one. Reason probably is so players wouldn't spam them and be annoying. Because you can hear them from very far away. So a player standing over here using his goat horn could be heard. That's the normal raid sound. So this is the Seek goat horn. Next one is Feel. Alright. 4 more. I think the cooldown is a little bit annoying. Should maybe be half as long, if you ask me. Alright. It kind of reminds me of going to the cinema and hearing the THX sound. So this is Yearn, we'd called Maya before, and last one, Dream. Yeah, sounds a little bit dreamy. Alright, so there's 2 ways to get those goat horns. So you could find them in chests, so you can find a pillager outposts, or you can get them from the goats directly. So, yeah, one goat already dropped a horn. I already set up a little farm here. So there's a couple blocks that would cause the goat to drop its horn if it rams it. I haven't really found success making this reliable, but just having him in an enclosure and one armor stand in the corner so far worked really good. I'm gonna summon a couple more of those goats. There's also a tag, has left horn and has right horn. As you can see, this guy already lost his left horn, and doesn't take long, and there it would just ram the armor stand and the horns get dropped. So you could have a hopper minecart going below, or just hoppers below and have them on mud. Yeah, it really doesn't take long with the screaming goats until the horns are dropped. And yeah, one requirement is really that you have some special blocks that would be rammed that occur naturally with a goat spawn. So logs would work, stone, iron ore, and packed ice. Okay. So you could make a farm out of this if you really wanted to, as you would need just to breed goats or have some kind of passive mob spawning based farm. Yeah, then drop them in here, pick up the goat horns, and get rid of them again. So after they drop their horns, they wouldn't regrow, obviously. So you would only get 2 goat horns per goat. So one last remark on the goat horns is that you can get 4 different types of the goat horn from the screaming goats, and the other 4 from the normal type of goat. The next thing I want to show is an addition to the allay node block interaction. So if you click the node block and the allays get assigned to that node block, there's little particles flying to the allays. So you would know which allays got assigned to which node block. There's also a way now to block this by having a wool block in between. I'm just gonna wait a little bit until all the connections after 30 seconds are lost, and I'm gonna show you that you couldn't connect to this allay because there's the wool block in between. As you can see, no particles in between. Also, it seems like it's pretty exact. I think it would connect from the center of the block to the center of the allay. So even if there's a little bit of wool in between, yeah, no particles. But this one over here seems to be, oh, it's actually, yeah, here you can see the particles. It's kind of hard to spot. From behind is a little bit better. Here you can see particles connect to the allay. Yeah, so this wool behavior will definitely be useful, for example, for non-stackable items orders. You can use the allay for. So there was always the problem if you had a lot of those allays stacked right next to each other, and you would activate one of the node blocks, all of the allays would get assigned to the node block. But if you can just conveniently maybe with a piston pushing down some wool blocks and leaving one gap open, then only a single allay would get assigned to a node block. And yeah, this way you can make sure the allays can drop off their items. So if they're 1 block away, they would be still in range and can then drop off the item. Then you just need a hopper below picking up the item. Okay, let's continue. What would a 1.19 snapshot be without any change to the Warden? So we also got a couple in this snapshot. So the first one is quite interesting, although it was said before the Warden wouldn't drop anything besides 5 XP. A drop was added, so it's really interesting. So if you manage to kill one, there's a 100% chance that the Warden would drop one of those Sculk Catalyst blocks. So that's really interesting. Previously, those were not renewable, so the only way to get those would be to go to one of those ancient cities and look around a little bit. Yeah, there's usually a couple of Sculk catalysts around that you can mine if you Silk that show. Right, so that's pretty interesting. I don't think there's really a need for getting a lot of those Sculk catalysts, so those are the blocks that would be responsible for the Sculk spreading. But this might be a bit relevant for Skyblock, I guess. So technically, if you start a world without any of the deep dark biomes, just with a normal, classic Skyblock start, you couldn't get any of the Sculk things. So what you need would be one Shrieker to get a Warden to spawn, but from there you could get the Sculk Catalyst and then also the Sculk Sensor and all the other blocks. The Warden itself also was balanced a little bit. So what changed was in this version, the range attack that the Warden would use if it's not within the normal range of the player or can't attack the player normally, does 10 damage instead of 30, or 5 hearts instead of 15 hearts. That's actually quite a lot. So you can only survive one of those attacks in case you're not regenerating. In case of regenerating, usually the third attack would already kill you. Also, the time between those attacks was reduced from 5 seconds to 2 seconds. So you will be hit more often by this attack. And additionally, this attack now can't be blocked by a shield, and armor would also have no effect on the attack. So there's really no point having, for example, netherite armor, so the attack would completely ignore the armor. There's also a custom death message now. If you get killed with a ranged attack, the player was obliterated by a sonically charged shriek. Alright, so those were some interesting changes to the Warden, I'd say. I feel like the range attack definitely got a little bit more deadly. And now you can also finally make a Warden form. There's also a point doing so, in case you need a lot of Sculk Catalysts. There's usually no point getting a lot of Sculk Catalysts for technical reasons, because you only need one usually, or a couple, in case you want to do anything with the Sculk blocks. But in case you need a lot of those for some decoration project, well, now you can make a farm out of it. Alright, next let's talk about an important bug fix. So you might remember this in older versions of the games, 1.12 and lower. If you had TNT blowing up ores, it would drop items and XP. So like the usual, if you would mine ores with a pickaxe, you would get XP. This was supposed to be fixed in this version, but as you can see, you only got items, no XP. And it was, oops, need to place ores for the next attempt. So it was actually fixed in a really weird way. You need to player light the TNT, flint and steel, for example, to get XP. This change also affects the Sculk blocks. So if you ignite the TNT with a button, you wouldn't get any XP. But if you ignite the TNT directly, although it's kind of a question, would it directly or indirectly? Button not direct? I don't know. A bit less direct than a flint and steel, well, then you get XP. So that's a really interesting change, but here I really have to wonder what the point is. Similarly, other explosions also wouldn't drop any XP, so in case you got an end crystal and blow it up, yeah, you also don't get any XP, or in case you have a creeper, for example, even if you light them on fire with flint and steel, also wouldn't drop any XP. What still works like before is using the wizard block breaking attack. So this was the case in all the snapshots so far, and this is probably still the way to go, to be honest. But let's quickly get back to the point of this whole Sculk block XP storage mechanic. It really seems like the merging is trying to prevent the automation of the Sculk blocks. But then I have to ask myself, what is even the point of it? So in case you have a mob farm, why would you convert your XP into Sculk blocks? So why would you use a hoe to mine the Sculk blocks if you could just use a sword and kill the mobs directly to get your XP? There's really no point storing your XP for later. Because there's so many downsides to it. So then if you want to store it for later, then you need a player placing down the blocks again, and then a tool to break them. Then you could as well just go to your XP farm again and get XP directly from there. So yeah, so the only real reason why I thought the Sculk block was added was to have a replacement for the passive XP we can get from zombified piglins, because that's something that doesn't require any player interaction, but was supposed to be fixed eventually. It's still working. Yeah, at the moment, in case we have this piglin mechanic, there's really no point using the Sculk blocks instead. It's also kind of strange that they specifically fixed the explosions in a way that would require a player interaction. So it seems like this was a fix to prevent TNT duping be abused further for this, because obviously this would be the logical choice if explosions would drop XP to blow up your Sculk blocks. So have some kind of mob farm, convert the XP automatically into Sculk blocks, and then blow them up with TNT, so the player can do something else, like mining blocks with a pickaxe, and then repair its mining tool with the XP this is generated passively. But that was always what I thought would be the whole purpose of the Sculk block. And yeah, if they now introduce a workaround for TNT not being abused, or TNT duping not being abused, I really don't see a point. Why not finally fix this TNT duping issue? Fix would be really simple. Add renewable sand to the game, so we can combine it with the renewable gunpowder we get from creepers or gas, so we can craft sufficient amount of TNT ourselves, and add movable block entities, so we have a replacement for the world eaters that kind of depend on TNT duping at the moment. So why is this not being done? So we have TNT duping for several years now. Everything else always seems to be more important. Adding goat horns to the game or frogs always is more important than movable block entities. Although we already have those in Bedrock Edition, it's a parity issue as well. A lot of people would really like it. So yeah, why not fix TNT duping in the first place? Then also this would come at a cost, and yeah, this would just be the better solution in my opinion. I guess it's also worth mentioning that there is a workaround for this whole TNT issue. So we can use a flame arrow that was shot by a player. We can keep that flame arrow alive by pushing it up with a piston. And in case it would drop the flame arrow on a TNT, then since it was shot by a player, Sculk would then also drop some XP. So this would be the workaround. You can make a contraption where you store the XP, the TNT, and use one after the other. So then the amount of time you can use this is then dependent on how much TNT you placed physically as a block. Alright, so that's all for today. Thanks guys for watching, and see you next time. Bye bye!